Making white wine on a Walmart budget.
I'm Greg.
I'm Julie, and we're the Crafty Winers.
So almost all the videos that we make are geared towards people that make wine as a hobby at home and have equipment such as hydrometers and pH meters and so forth. This series of videos, and I'll link a playlist above, is geared towards people that probably haven't made wine before, maybe don't want to spend the money on a wine kit, but have a Walmart nearby where you can get the ingredients.
Or any store. It doesn't have to come from Walmart, but all of our stuff did.
All of our stuff came from Walmart.
Yep.
Yeah, most of the stuff can come from any grocery store. But we keep track of the fact that Walmart does have all the things that we're showing you. This is white wine. This is going to be a semi-sweet white wine. And it uses Walmart grape juice. We're using Anti-bacterial Soap from Walmart to clean everything, and that's very important. You don't want bacteria in with your yeast because it could thrive just like your yeast does, and that could make you sick. We're using baking soda. We're using a pitcher. It doesn't have to be this particular one, but any 1 gallon plus pitcher from Walmart. And this one happens to be Rubbermaid 1 gallon. Sugar came from Walmart. Fleischmann's active dry bread yeast can actually work for making wine as well, and that's what we're using. You're going to need at least 2 packets, but they come in packets of 3, so that's probably how you want to buy it. So this ingredient is optional. Can also come from Walmart. Doesn't have to be exactly this brand or exactly like this. This is whole wheat flour. You can also use cream of wheat, non-instant kind, the 1.5 minute kind, or wheat germ, or anything that you can find at Walmart that is not bleached preferably and has wheat as the primary and preferably the sole ingredient. We're going to use this as food to help the yeast along. So to start that process, that's probably the first thing you're going to want to do. Take out 5 tablespoons of whatever you chose for this food and 1 full packet of the Fleischmann's dry yeast. Put it in the oven for 10 minutes at 225, and that will kill the yeast because we want this yeast to be dead as opposed to the yeast that's going to be in our drink. And mix it up really good, and this ends up being something you can put away to try the rest of our recipes once we're done with this one. Let's get started on this.
All right.
So we have already cleaned, washed out all of these things with our antibacterial Dawn. When you're making wine as a hobby and you're more serious about this and you want to buy some stuff, Star San is probably what you want to use. But this will work just fine to get started. The antibacterial part of this is important. So the first thing that we want to do is take out 10 ounces of grape juice, and we're going to put it aside. For right now, we're just going to put it in a measuring cup. This is going to be used in a couple of weeks, so once we empty out these grape juice jugs, you can put that in one of these jugs and then put it in the fridge for us to use later. We're putting this juice in the pitcher, although it's fine to also put it into your fermenter here. And let me say this fermenter, Walmart rotates out the beverage dispensers that they have in stock. So we've used several.
Frequently. We've got a whole lot of options.
Here are 2 other styles that Walmart doesn't currently carry at ours right now, but that they have in the past, so they'll probably go back to it. This one has a loose lid at the top, has a spigot. This one has a lid at the top, has a spigot. The spigot is the important thing, and having at least 1 gallon capacity, preferably like 1.4 or more, it would be good so that you've got some room at the top for the fermentation to happen.
These are the cutest ones, though. These will probably come back in the summer.
This probably will be back. But so whichever one of these or whatever the one they have, if they don't have any of these, go ahead and use that. Just go look in the section of Walmart that has this type of containers. And again, the spigot and over 1 gallon are the 2 important things. I'll come back to these when we talk about airlocks.
And like he said, this isn't necessary to put it in here to mix everything up, but we're just used to using a pitcher. It's a little easier to stir in something that's round than square.
Here, puppies. These are our corgis, Pippin and Nori, who usually like playing with the bottles, but
Not
doesn't
so
look
much
like
today.
So now this that we removed, the 10 ounces of juice, I'm going to pour back into my empty jug. I'm going to put a lid on it, maybe mark on it to keep the kids from drinking it, and put it in my fridge. So we have our almost 1 gallon of juice minus the 12 ounces removed. So Julie's going to put in our
We're
sugar.
gonna add-
You want
This is a cup and a half of sugar.
a cup and a half will make this about a 12% wine, plus or minus. We also want to put in a full tablespoon of our food, yeast food.
Yeast food.
Doesn't matter if you put a little extra or a little, possibly a little less. Just toss it in there. I'm going to put this in a baggie so I can use it for our next recipe.
And then a teaspoon of the baking soda will also go in here.
And then stir it up real good. And if you use one of these alternate fermenters that I showed you with the spigot, some of them may not have a hole at the top that's big enough to stir, so you definitely would want to use the pitcher like we're doing. But you otherwise could put it in here and shake it, but usually these aren't very watertight. So if you do that, prepare to get some of it on you. I've learned this from experience.
Yep. The first time we used the fruit one, it did not hold the liquid in.
In that particular video, we were making red wine on a Walmart budget.
Which is a little more obvious when it leaks.
Doesn't have to be stirred perfectly, but just try to get it pretty mixed. Now I'm going to drop everything, spill it all over myself. In the winemaking world, this is now called must, because this is what we're going to ferment into wine.
Oh, she's starting.
Early.
It's not even close to dinner time, Nori.
One step left before we put this away.
And that would be the yeast.
So you're going to want to save a little bit of this yeast, preferably. Don't pour it all in, but pour at least half of it in. Sprinkle it on top. You're going to want to save some of this for your next batch because you don't need all of it.
I'll just put half of it in.
About half.
Not an exact science. Okay, that looks like about half.
And then you can fold this up to try to keep the air out of it, put it back in your fridge for the next recipe.
Use a little paper clip or something to keep it.
So, airlocks. It's very important that you allow the gases to get out of this and keep bugs from getting in. This particular fermenter has a little pinhole, and that's plenty. It's small enough that even a fruit fly can't get through that, but it's big enough that CO2 can get out. So, this one is easy. On the other styles, this one has a lid that you can just leave on loosely, or you can watch our red wine on a Walmart budget and see how we did a balloon airlock, but it's really not probably necessary. Just having that so that it's not on tightly will allow the gases out and it doesn't allow bugs in. And then the same with the white lid style. Just don't put it on tightly. So we're going to put this away now for, I'm going to suggest 4 weeks because it might be difficult for you to tell when it's done. But when it is done, it will be completely still again. There won't be bubbles rising up out of it anymore. It might have stopped fermenting a while before the bubbles stop, but the bubbles coming up is CO2 coming out, and you do want that CO2 to come out before we go to the next step as much as possible.
True.
So put this in an 80, 85 degree area if possible. The warmer, the better within reason. Don't put it in a 130 degree room, but 80, 85 is perfect if you have a water heater room that you can put it in.
Works
Something to
well.
that extent. I would watch it for the first couple of days to make sure it does start fermenting. If not, you can ask us below to give us your situation and we can probably tell you why it didn't. But by all means, it should start bubbling and frothing and looking like a living organism is in there eating the sugar, which is really what's happening.
Yep.
So again, 4 weeks from now, we will take this out and it should be done. It should be a variety of white wine. So we will see you at that point. Okay, it's done. There's no way that you're going to be able to see it because they're so small, but there are tiny, tiny, tiny little bubbles still coming up on ours. and that is not abnormal, even though the fermentation I know is done. It's because there's CO2 that's still exiting the wine, and that'll probably happen for a while. We'll be able to speed that along by stirring it after we do our next step, because you really don't want that CO2 to still be in there when you taste this. So stirring it is a good way to get rid of that CO2. So remember the 10 ounces of white grape juice that we put away? This is it. So I'm going to put it in here first because it's going to help mix it. If you were really making this semi-sweet white wine, you would use something called potassium sorbate. You can't get that from Walmart without ordering it online. You can get it on walmart.com, but what that does is allows you to put the sugar that's in this white grape juice into your wine and not have a danger of it starting to ferment again. However, because this is wine on a Walmart budget, and because we want all the ingredients to be able to come from the actual store and not bought online, we're going to tell you that you need to keep this cold after you put these two things together. Or if this warms up, it could start fermenting again. And if you've got it in a bottle, that bottle could become what they call a bottle bomb. So you don't want that to happen. So to keep that from happening, just make sure that this stays in the refrigerator until it's consumed. Or, I mean, obviously, if you're drinking it in a glass, you're okay. Yeah. But don't put this in bottles and then store it in your warm attic because you'll have some surprises.
You mean they don't have to sit in the refrigerator while they drink it?
They don't need to unless you want to, if you've got a really big refrigerator or if you're really small. But yeah, the sorbate, if you want to go ahead and buy that online, that gives you options of not needing to worry about letting your drink warm up and explode.
Correct.
So yeah, it makes it so that the yeast that are in here, which are still alive, they're just hibernating right now. And even after we dump this liquid out, they're still going to be in the liquid. And they'll come back to life if you get the conditions correct for them, which includes giving them nutrient and sugar and warming them up.
Yep.
So just keep that in mind. So I'm using my spigot. This is why we wanted a spigot. I'm using my spigot to drain the liquid out of here and leave the sediment that's at the bottom of this where it is. And this is mixing automatically now with my white grape juice, so I could get away without using a spoon. But like I said, you probably want to get the CO2 out, so that probably means stirring it until you don't see it fizzing anymore after we drain it.
Which could take quite a bit of time, but it's important to do.
That grape juice added some grape flavor back in because fermentation does rob some of that flavor. And it also added a little bit of sweetness so that it won't be quite so dry tasting. Yeah. And finally, it lowered the ABV a tad bit from about 12 to about 10%. So this is going to be about a 10% wine, a little bit more in our case because it went a little more dry than what it normally would. So I'm pouring this in a way like you would pour your carbonated beverage, your beer or whatever, where it's going against the side of the pitcher because I don't want a lot of oxygen to get added to it. It's not a huge deal, but there is a chance of it getting oxidized. So just a good practice to pour it in a way that it's not splashing and adding oxygen. And then at the end, if I want to, I can tip this to try to get all of the liquid I can without getting any of the sediment, preferably. This pitcher is a little heavy now, so I'm shaking. And I'm not going to try to get every ounce of this because there's a lot of sediment that's going to want to try to come with it. I'm happy with that, I think. So that is right around a gallon of white wine. We're going to grab a spoon and stir it for a minute, and then we're going to give it a taste. So yet again, everything that this is going to touch has been antibacterially washed and done antibacterial. Or in our case, Starsan, which is a little bit better, but you can't get it from Walmart. So I'm going to stir this until I don't see fizz anymore, because there is quite a bit of fizz. And again, that's CO2, which is a byproduct of fermentation. It naturally goes away over time. It just comes out, it bubbles out. But you can speed that along a lot by stirring it. And again, don't stir it in a way that adds a lot of oxygen, because that also is not going to be good for the wine. Okay, a lot of the CO2 is out. I obviously could have stirred it a lot more, but this is good enough for our tasting. And then this is going to sit for a while before we drink it all anyway. So in our fridge, because we didn't add
In our
sorbate.
fridge, yes.
This is not a wine glass, but it'll suffice. Nor did it come from Walmart, so I guess we're breaking our rule.
Uh-oh. It's
This is-
actually a Crown Royal glass.
This wine is going to be better cold.
Mm-hmm. That's not half bad.
Obviously, if you were watching our other videos on how to make white wine, it's going to come out better than this. But this is Walmart wine, so
It has alcohol in it, and it doesn't taste bad. So,
it's got actually pretty good flavor.
yeah, it does.
If you wanted it to have more sweetness, pull out more concentrate at the beginning. Instead of 10 ounces, you could do 12 or 14. This is probably, I think it's probably pretty close to the right amount for us.
Yeah, because it's just a little bit of sweet so it rounds off the, any harsh alcohol taste, but it's not sweet like.
This is 75 degrees or so right now, so it will taste better when it's cold.
It's got a little bit of a aftertaste that's similar to, I want to say, Sauvignon Blanc.
This is not Concord. I don't recall what grapes they make this out of, and it's not on the jar, so I'll link it above. But it's it's not really a wine grape. But I mean, honestly, for the amount of work and the amount of expense you go into for a gallon of this, pretty good deal. And I will also link the cost above and the total cost. Again, this is not probably a wine that you'd order at a restaurant quality. It might be, but it's definitely a fun one to make at home, and it's all Walmart ingredients. So
You never know. They could be putting this in those bottles and charging you $50 for it, and it's really Walmart wine.
certainly are.
But yeah, I'm
And
impressed with
it's
that,
around-
actually.
It's around 10%. So
It's pretty good. Thank you for watching our video on white wine on a Walmart budget. Give it a try. Let us know how it came out. If you do have any problems with it, just list it in our comments below, and we'll probably be able to tell you what went wrong in the process, but it should work for you. And please like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. If you have, thank you very much for your support. Until next time, cheers.